KoboAbe's TheBoxMan, Clean Sweep of Away No Hobos. I've read this in the introduction, and my case, I'll reread this before I start. This is the record of a boxman. I am beginning this account in a box, a cardboard box that reaches just to my hips when I put it on over my head. That is to say, at this juncture, the boxman is me, a boxman in his box, is recording the chronicle of a boxman. Instructions for making a box. And let me show it. Zydeal. That's what you need to make a box. Materials: 1 empty box of corrugated cardboard, vinyl sheet, semi-transparent, 20 inches square, rubber tape, water resistant, about 8 yards, wire about 2 yards, small pointed knife, a tool. To have on hand, if necessary, 3 pieces of worn canvas and 1 pair of work boots, in addition to regular work clothes for streetwear. Any empty box a yard long by a yard wide and about 4 feet deep will do. However, in practice, one of the standard forms commonly called a quarto is desirable. Standard items are easy to find. Most commercial articles that use standard-sized boxes are generally of a regular shape. Various types of foodstuffs precisely adaptable to the container so that the construction is sturdier than others. The most important reason to use the standardized form is that it is hard to distinguish one box from another. As far as I know, most boxmen utilize this quarto box. For if the box has any striking features to it, its special anonymity will suffer. Even the common variety of corrugated cardboard has recently been strengthened, and since it is semi-waterproof, there is no need to select any special kind, unless you're going through the rainy season. Ordinary cardboard has better ventilation, and it's lighter and easier to use. For those who wish to occupy one box over a period of time, regardless of the season, I recommend the frog box, especially good in wet weather. This box has a vinyl finish, and as the name suggests, it is exceedingly strong in water. When new, it has a sheen as if oiled, but apparently it produces static electricity easily. Quickly absorbs dirt and gets covered with dust, then the edge is thicker than the ordinary one, and it looks wavy. You can tell it at once from the common box. To construct your box, there is no particular procedure to follow. First, decide what is to be the bottom and the top of the box. Decide according to whatever design there may be, or make the top the side with the least wear, or just decide arbitrarily and cut out the bottom part. In cases where one has numerous personal effects to carry, the bottom part can be folded inward without cutting. And with wire and tape, the 2 ends can be made into a baggage rack. Tape the exposed part of the edges at the 3 points on the ceiling and at the one on the side where they come together. The greatest care must be taken when making the observation window. First, decide on its size and location. Since there will be individual variations, the following figures are purely for the sake of reference. Ideally, the upper edge of the window will be 6 inches from the top of the box, and the lower edge 11 inches below that. The width will be 17 inches. Everything's converted into inches for the American translation. Although this is the UK publication. After you have subtracted the thickness of the base to stabilize the box when in place, I put a magazine on my head. The upper edge of the window comes to the eyebrows. You may perhaps consider this to be too low, but one seldom gets the opportunity to look up. While the lower edge is used frequently, when you are in an upright position, it will be difficult to walk if a stretch of at least 5 feet is not visible in front. There are no special grounds for computing the width. These parts should be adjusted to the required ventilation and the lateral strength of the box. At any rate, since you can see right down to the ground, the window should be as small as possible. Next comes the installation of the frosted vinyl curtain over the window. There's a little trick here too, that is, the upper edge is taped to the outside of the opening and the rest is left to hang free. But please do not forget to anticipate a lengthwise slit. This simple device is used beyond all expectations. The slit should be in the center, and the two flaps should overlap a fraction of an inch. As long as the box is held vertical, they will serve as screens, and no one will be able to see in. When the box is tilted slightly, an opening appears, permitting you to see out. It is simple, but extremely subtle contrivance, so be very careful when selecting the vinyl. By the way, it goes on like this. And notice how this makes me think of Melville's Moby Dick, right? It's these descriptions of like the mast and the this and the that and all the technical descriptions, because Abe Kōbō was scientifically minded. So he describes all these details, but it's also bizarre. I mean, he's talking about how to construct a box to live in and have a window to see through, and the angle and the this and the that, and put the magazine on the head. So I think many people start reading the book and they're like, they're tired already of reading, or they're bored. And certainly today, where people's attention spans are like 2 seconds, if it's not a TikTok video, they go to the next. And probably by now people have already given up on this reading. It goes on as to how to construct the box. I'm not going to read the whole thing because I'm going to skip around, read excerpts. And it just goes on, and he talks at the end about having, some items inside the box. You have a radio, mug, thermos, flashlight. It's like preparing for an earthquake, right? And then he says, get some rubber boots. There's nothing particular to add as long as they don't have any holes. And so on. And then he says, with 3 layers divided in front, you've got this canvas you wrap, and then you have 3 layers divided. It's easy to move in all ways, as well as being most convenient for defecation and urinating and other sundry other purposes. So, it's like he goes to every last detail of how you're going to urinate and defecate inside of your box. I mean, this is like great detail is spent by Abe Kōbō on imagining this. It's something you don't think about. It's something the film version doesn't deal with much, right? You get out of the box and urinate in the bushes, or what do you do? The next chapter, an example, the case of A. This is where you get an example of a boxman and what happens to him. And we can think about this in the larger context of what the author might be trying to say in terms of the metaphor or the parable that this is describing. It's 1970s Tokyo. An example, the case of A. Again, very much like Kafka, right? You don't have a name. Just making the box is simple enough. At the outside, it takes less than an hour. However, it requires considerable courage to put the box on over your head and get to be a boxman. Anyway, as soon as anyone gets into this simple, unprepossessing paper cubicle and goes out into the streets, he turns into an apparition that is neither man nor box. A boxman possesses some offensive poison about him. I suppose there's some degree of poison even in a picture of the snake lady on a billboard, or the bear man in a circus sideshow, or a gaijin. But even so, that can be cancelled out by the admission fee. You pay to see the snake woman, you pay to see the bear man, you pay to see the hunger artist. But the poison of a boxman is not so simple. For example, in your case, I'm sure you've not yet heard of a boxman, have you? Though there can't be any statistics, there is evidence that a rather large number of them are living in concealment throughout the country. But I've never heard that boxmen are being talked about anywhere. Evidently, the world intends to keep its mouth tightly shut about them. Have you ever actually seen one? Let's stop fooling each other now. Certainly a boxman is hardly conspicuous. He's like a piece of rubbish shoved between a guardrail and a public toilet, or underneath a footbridge. But that's different from being inconspicuous or invisible. Since he's not especially uncommon, there is every opportunity of seeing one. Surely, even you have at least once, or even you have. But I also realize full well that you don't want to admit it. You're not the only one. Even with no ulterior motive, apparently one instinctively averts one's eyes. Yes, I suppose if you were to wear dark glasses at night or put on a mask, you couldn't help being considered some very timid creature, or if not that, someone up to no good. All the more so than with a boxman who conceals his whole body. One can hardly object if he is considered suspicious. Why, I wonder, would anyone deliberately want to be a boxman? Why, I wonder, would anyone deliberately want to be a boxman? Why, I wonder, would anyone deliberately want to be a boxman? Perhaps you think it's strange, but there are many amazing cases that explain why. Trifling motivations that at first glance are not motivations at all. A is a case in point. We having fun? I'm enjoying it. One day a boxman took up residence directly below the window of A's apartment. Though A tried his best not to look, he did. No matter how he struggled to ignore the boxman, he was very much aware of his presence. The first feelings that assailed A were anger and abhorrence toward a foreign body that has imposed itself, irritation and perplexity at having his territory encroached on illegally. It's my home. It's my territory. I'll put a missile on the border if you get any nearer. But he decided to try and wait things out in silence for the time being. Anyway, he thought the neighborhood busybody nagging about the garbage disposal or who knows what. And of course, gaijin don't know how to throw out trash. That's why they don't accept gaijin for apartments. Nagging about the garbage disposal or who knows what would take action, but there was no sign that anybody was about to handle the matter. Unable to put up with the situation any longer, he complained to the janitor of the apartment building, but in vain. Getting over a cold again. The boxman was only visible from A's window, and anyone who could manage not to be seen would not deliberately move. As frequently as possible, everybody pretended not to see him. See no evil, hear no evil. Speak no evil. You can always wear a mask. Finally, A went to the police box himself. Oh, irony. When the board officer told him to fill out a damage report, A said for the first time he experienced something similar to fear. Look here, the officer snapped. I suppose you made it clear he was to get out? There was nothing for A to do but take action himself. On the way home from the police box, he stopped at a friend's house and borrowed an air rifle. Once back in his room, he had a cigarette and calmed down. Then he looked directly out the window. And as he did so, the boxman turned the observation slit in the box straight toward him. There were scarcely 3 or 4 yards between them. As if perceiving A's inner confusion, the box tilted, and the semi-opaque vinyl curtain over the window divided vertically in two. You see that mirror image happening. From within, an indistinct whitish eye was firmly fixed on him. A felt a rush of blood go to his head. He flung open the window and loaded the gun. Then he took aim. But at what? At what? At such close distance, he might get the boxman in the eye. And if he did that, it would only be trouble later on. It would be enough to shoot him somewhere else just to teach him not to show his face around here again. As A was speculating about his opponent's position in the box and the contours of his body, his finger, still in the trigger, began to grow numb and falter. It would be so much better if the fellow would vacate the premises because of a simple threat. How many times have we warned you? Right? He didn't want a single drop of blood left behind. But he couldn't wait forever. If a simple threat didn't work, it would be useless to try it again. He drew a bead. Anger, again, welled up within him. Time overheated, burned. He squeezed the trigger, the barrel of the gun, and then the box made a noise like that of a wet trouser cuff, snapped by an umbrella handle. At the same time, the box gave a big leap. However inventively it may be used, corrugated cardboard is, after all, merely paper. Kind of like money. Although it demonstrates considerable strength against general surface pressure, it is weak when stressed at a given point. The lead bullet must have bored into the fellow's body with great force. But neither the screams nor the jeers he had anticipated were forthcoming. Once it had leaped up, the box again in repose showed signs within of an extremely slow movement. Slow movement, like Nathan Adler in Oxford Town. A was at a loss. He had aimed several inches below and to the left of the line connecting the lower left and the upper right angles of the window. He estimated it to be about where the arm meets the right shoulder. Had he hesitated so long that his aim had deflected, but the box's reaction had been too great for that. An unpleasant thought occurred to him. The man in the box did not necessarily have to be facing front. The lower part of his body was completely covered with canvas, so there was no way to tell exactly what position he was in. He might have been sitting cross-legged, his knees on a diagonal in the box. If so, the bullet might well have grazed the top of the shoulder and hit the carotid artery. An uncomfortable numbness formed an oval round A's mouth. Running steps in a dream. With bated breath, A waited for the next movement. The boxman did not budge. No, he was clearly moving. The inclination was definitely increasing, not so fast as the second hand of a watch, but faster than the minute hand. Was he going to fall over? From the box came a sound like scraping on not fully dry clay. Suddenly the boxman arose. He was unexpectedly tall. A heard a sound like that of striking a wet tent. Slowly changing his direction, the boxman gave a low cough and stretched. He began to walk, swinging the box slightly right and left. The position of his hips was alarmingly toward the back, perhaps because he was bending forward. A thought the box had spoken, but he could not catch the words. When it got to the street that ran along the building, it disappeared around the corner in the same position. You see the absurdity of this box with legs running down the street after being shot at. And in the film, actually, there is a scene like this, although it's a different context than in the novel here. What disappointed A most of all was that he hadn't been able to see the expression on the boxman's face. Kind of like when people wear masks. Perhaps it was his imagination, but to A, the surface of the ground being behind the fleeting boxman appeared darker than elsewhere. 5 cigarette stubs had been snuffed out underfoot. An empty bottle was plugged with paper. 2 enormous spiders were crawling about inside. One looked like a corpse. Crumpled wrapping paper from a chocolate bar. Then 3 large successive blackish stains as big as a thumb. Were they blood stains, he wondered? No phlegm or spittle, doubtlessly. A simpered slightly as if in... That's what happens when you put A at the beginning of a sentence. A simpered. A simpered slightly as if in apology. Well, then he had hit the target. In about half a month, A had almost begun to forget the boxman. But he was worried about using the shortcut to the station when he went to work, and to avoid the narrow lane, he unconsciously changed his route. Yet he continued to look out of his window as soon as he woke up and first thing when he came home. If only he had not decided to turn in his icebox in due course, he would have been cured of his habit. But the new refrigerator, equipped with a freezing compartment, was normal enough, and it came in a corrugated cardboard box. Furthermore, it was just the right size. How convenient. As soon as the contents were out and it was empty, A began to think about the boxman. He heard the whipping sound again. He felt as if the air rifle bullet had ricocheted from 2 weeks before. A was confused and decided at once to dispose of the box. But instead he washed his hands, blew his nose, and with great diligence he gargled repeatedly. The rebounding bullet flying about inside his cranium would doubtless set his brain functions anew. Askew. After observing the neighborhood for a while, he drew the curtains over the windows and gingerly crawled into the box. See where this is going? Inside it was dark and there was the sweet smell of waterproof paint. The place seemed very homelike. A recollection was on the verge of dawning, but he couldn't grasp it. He wanted to stay like this forever. But in less than a minute, he came to his sentences and he crawled back out. Feeling a little uneasy, he decided to keep the box for a while. The following day, when he returned from work, A cut an observation window in the box with a knife. Smiling bitterly, and then he tried putting it on over his head like TheBoxMan. But he took it off immediately. He might well smile bitterly. He didn't understand what was happening. He viciously and resolutely kicked the box into the corner of the room, but not hard enough to destroy it. On the third day, he more or less regained his composure. Can't talk today. All these asthma sprays I'm taking for allergies and stuff. He regained his composure and tried looking out of the observation window. He couldn't recall what had surprised him so the evening before. He could definitely feel a change. But such a degree of change was desirable. From the whole scene, thorns fell and things appeared smooth and round, stains in the wall with which he was completely familiar and which were utterly harmless to him, old magazines piled helter-skelter, a little television set with bent antennae, empty tins of corned beef beginning to overflow with cigarette butts. He was again made forcibly aware of the unconscious tension in himself, by everything being so unexpectedly filled with thorns. Perhaps he should put aside his useless prejudice about boxes. The next day, A watched television with the box over his head. From the fifth day on, except for sleeping, eating, defecating, and urinating, he lived in the box as long as he was in his room. Other than a twinge of conscience, he was not especially aware of doing anything abnormal. To the contrary, he felt that this was much more natural. He was much more at home. Even in the bachelor's life he had reluctantly led until now misfortune had turned into blessing. Sixth day. At length, the first Sunday came around. He expected no visitors. He had no place to go. From morning on, he stuck to the box. He was calm. He was relaxed. But something was missing. At noon, he finally realized what he required. He went into town and bustled around, making purchases: chamber pot, flashlight, thermos, picnic set, tape, wire, hand mirror, 7 poster colors, plus various foodstuffs that could be eaten without preparation. When he got home, he reinforced the box with the tape and the wire. Then, storing away the other items, he shut himself up in it. A hung the hand mirror on the inner wall of the box. Left side toward the window. And then, by the radiance of the flashlight, he painted his lips green with one of the poster colors. I don't have green lips, but we could do this. Okay. After that, he traced, in gradually expanding circles, the 7 colors of the rainbow, beginning with red around his eyes. His face resembled that of a bird or a fish, rather than that of a man. It looked like the scene of an amusement park viewed from a helicopter. He could see a small retreating figure scampering off in it. There was no makeup so suitable to the box. Ultimately, he thought, he would become the contents that was right for the container. For the first time, he casually masturbated in the box. For the first time, he slept, leaning against the wall with the box over his head. Then the following morning, just a week had gone by, A went stealthily out into the streets with the box over his head, and he didn't come back. It's not over yet. There's one more paragraph left to this, and a concluding sentence. If A made any error, it was only that he was a little more overly aware of the boxmen than others were. Other boxmen. You cannot laugh at A if you are one of those who have dreamed of, described in their thoughts even once, the anonymous city that exists for its nameless inhabitants. You should not be indifferent, Chuo-sen. Chuo line. Because you are always exposed to the same dangers as A. Dear reader, that city where doors are open for anyone, where even among strangers you need not be on the defensive, where you can walk on your head or sleep by the roadside without being blamed, where you are free to sing if you're proud of your ability, and where, having done all that, you can mix with the nameless crowds whenever you wish. This is also Edgar Allan Poe, right? Man of the crowd. Thus it will seldom do to point a gun at a boxman. The dial's in the bathroom. The gun is in the chest. I'm going to read one more chapter. Are you enjoying this as much as I am? A safety device, just in case. That's the title of this section. Now, I may seem to be repeating myself, but I am at present a boxman. And for a while I intend to write about me. I am getting along here with these notes as I take shelter from the rain under a bridge. Overhead the prefectural highway 3 crosses a canal. Highway 3. It is just 15 or 16 minutes past 9 by my not too accurate watch. The dark night sky trails its skirt of rain low over the surface of the land. It has been falling since morning. Fishery warehouses and lumber sheds stretch away as far as the eye can see. There are no human habitations, and no one passes by. Even the headlights of trucks coming and going on the bridge do not reach this far. A flashlight suspended from the ceiling lights the paper beneath my hand. Perhaps that is why the letters formed by my ballpoint pen seem almost black when they should be green. The seaside smell of rain is quite like a dog's breath. The place is not all that suitable as a rain shelter, for the drizzle is directionless, as if expelled from an atomizer. The bridge girders are too high. This entire location is unsuitable. Everything, being at a place like this, at a time like this, is unnatural and not like a boxman. For example, using an electric flashlight is a terrible waste. People like us who live on the road make do almost completely with items we pick up from the streets. It is an extravagance to use an electric flashlight only for the purpose of writing notes. With the number of new street lamps, there's plenty of light to read a newspaper while taking shelter from the rain. Somehow it's been over 2 hours since I sat myself down in this spot so ill-suited to a boxman. But I should begin with an explanation. Of course, no matter how diligent I am with my justifications, I am not confident of completely convincing you. Anyway, you won't believe them. But the truth's the truth, and that's that. This box of mine has been sold to someone. There's a buyer willing to pay 50,000 yen. That's about $500. No, 5,000 yen. Yeah, it's about $500 US. I'm waiting for her now to make the transaction. The nurse. Or the fake nurse. Or the fake doctor. If you find it incredible, I too am suspended between belief and disbelief. There's no way of believing, is there? I don't understand the reason for someone wanting to pay out good money for an old, worn-out paper box. Why did I react to such a temptation when I didn't believe the buyer was serious? The reason is simple. There was no reason to be suspicious, that's all. It's just like being stopped by a shining object on the side of the road. My buyer was shining, like a piece of broken beer bottle in the evening sun. One knows it is of no value, but there is nonetheless a strange fascination with the light refracted by the glass. One is unexpectedly made to feel as if one were seeing another time dimension. Her legs especially were as delicate and graceful as the rails of a railroad seen from an eminence, stretching away into the distance, bluish light steps where, like the open skies, nothing obstructs the line of vision. There was no reason for believing her, but neither was there reason to doubt her. It was as if, without realizing it, I had been completely disarmed by her legs. Of course I'm remorseful now. Or rather, it may be better to say that I'm absolutely depressed by the premonition that I shall be made to feel serious remorse. A wretched feeling. No matter how I think about it, it is not like a boxman. It is as if I have abandoned the prerogatives of a boxman. It is as if I have abandoned the prerogatives of a boxman. I just read that. If there is hope, it is so subtle as to be undetectable even with a high-energy analyzer. Is some transformation beginning to take place in my box? Perhaps so. On reflection, after wandering about this town, I have the feeling that the surface of the box has become fragile and terribly vulnerable. Certainly, the town bears me some ill will. Of course, choosing this place was partially the buyer's idea. Even though I did suggest it, my danger is her danger. At the foot of the bridge stands a stone jizo, which is a Buddhist deity we see in Japan, which they're built, they have staffs, and people put gifts of the jizo for the souls of babies that died, usually before birth. Mizuko, there's again, Mizuko is water. Abe Kobo often talks about water images that died prematurely. Okay, and so the people pray for the souls of the dead infants by going to Jizo and praying. They're all over the country. They're all over the place. So it says, guardian of dead children, right? At the foot of the bridge stands a Jizo, a stone Jizo. The Jizo also comes up in Abe Kobo's Kangaroo Notebook, and it also comes up in Yumejuya, the 10 Nights of Dreams by Natsume Soseki, in the Dream of the Third Night. So it has a red flannel bib, which they often have red bibs on them, apparently placed there in memory of some child who died by drowning. Once again, water imagery. There is a recently painted white sign beside a flight of stone steps, again, stone Jizo, stone steps, I'm doing the literature professor thing here, that leads down to a boat landing slightly upstream, prohibiting playing in the water. You also have the river of sticks in the Kangaroo Notebook in the water again. But fortunately, the vinyl over the observation window has been moistened by the rain. Water. I'll shut up, but there's water all over this. And because of the faded matting effect, the visibility is enhanced. The concrete embankment along the canal cuts diagonally in bold relief across the window. The wan lights of a small freighter at berth, BERTH, wavering fractionally against the current, spill over palely onto the sidewalk at the top of the embankment. As if someone were to pass by, he would be as conspicuous as a spot of ink on clothing. There, a cat cut directly across the pavement, a stray cat with a filthy matted coat. It is manifestly pregnant and has a bulging white belly heavy with its load of kittens. Its tattered ears bear the marks of fighting, and since I can distinguish such details even as my pen glides along, perhaps I need not be neurotic. No matter what, the buyer, even if she wants to, won't be able to take me by surprise all that easily. Now, of course, what I want most of all is for her to come here of her own accord, as she promised. But, as you see, too much is vague. I can't understand 50,000 yen for this box. And why would she want to negotiate in a place like this? There's no reason to believe her, nor any to doubt her. There's no reason to doubt, nor any to believe. A slender, transparent, ephemeral neck. Anyway, there's nothing better than being on my guard, hence my little safety device. Worst comes to worst, I intend to leave these notes as evidence. Whatever death I meet, I have no desire for suicide. If I die, it won't be suicide, even by mistake, but definitely foul play. No matter how much one rejects the world and disappears from it by getting into a box, essentially a box is Stop, out of ink. I get an old pencil from my bag, 2.5 minutes to sharpen it. Fortunately, I have not yet been killed. As proof, I have changed from a ballpoint pen to a pencil, but my writing is exactly the same as before. You see bits of pale fire in here? That kind of way of writing, right? Now, what is it I started to write? The last thing I wrote was perhaps the first letters of different. Essentially, a box is different. Perhaps I meant to write a boxman is different from a vagrant, or something like that. Or, well, of course, as far as society is concerned, they apparently don't distinguish very clearly between the two, as much as boxmen do. Indeed, they have not a few points in common. For example, not having an ID card, or a profession, or an established place of residence, or indication of name, or age, or a set time or place for eating and sleeping. And then not getting your hair cut, or brushing your teeth, rarely taking a bath, needing almost no cash for daily living, and lots of other things. Yet beggars and vagrants are apparently quite aware of the difference. Any number of times they made me feel unpleasant. Sometime when I have the opportunity, I intend to write about it, but the Wapen beggars are especially offensive to me. The minute I draw near the beggars and vagrants area, they make me experience a reaction close to morbid nervousness that is a far cry from indifference. In reading this now, I recognize my, and I think it was subconscious, because I wasn't consciously thinking about, but I think the Tour of Beaujardin, the vagrants, maybe were subconsciously at the back of my mind when I was writing that, because the Wapen vagrants, right? Here, a little bit similar. The minute I draw near the beggars and vagrants area, they make me experience a reaction close to morbid nervousness that is a far cry from indifference. I am looked at with more undisguised contempt and hostility than by anyone who pays his daily expenses and lives at a recorded address. I'll keep my comments to myself. I have in fact never heard of a beggar turning into a boxman. Since I have no intention of being a beggar, he has none of being a boxman. Even so, I do not intend to look down on them. Surprisingly enough, even beggars are part of the environs that belong to the townsfolk. And when you become a boxman, perhaps you're below a beggar. Beggars have their pride. Boxmen have their pride. Don't cross the line, man. Don't cross the red line. Paralysis of the heart's sense of direction is the boxman's chronic complaint. At such times, the axis of the earth sways, and one suffers a severe nausea resembling seasickness. But for some reason, there is absolutely no relationship with the consciousness of being a social dropout. Not once does he feel guilty about the box. I personally feel that a box, far from being a dead end, is an entrance to another world. I don't know to where, but an entrance to somewhere, some other world. I say this, but the opening to that other world is not very different from a dead-end alley if I stifle my nausea as I examine the world outside my little observation window. Let's stop using the fancy words. I mean, I don't yet have any desire to die. Yet it's too late. Indeed, I wonder if she intends to renege on her promise. I still have 7 matches. Wet tobacco is absolutely tasteless. Promises. To take away the bitter taste, a drop of whiskey, a little less than a third left in my pocket flask. But it's all right if she doesn't come. And I'm running out of battery. Is breaking a promise anything to get excited about? I'll be a lot more amazed if she puts in an appearance as she said she would. What if she doesn't go back on her promise, but sends a substitute in her place? And I'm positive this will happen. A substitute will come in her place. I have a general idea as to who that will be too. In the final analysis, they're both in it together. And by the way, it ends up being this doctor or fake doctor. With her as decoy, the substitute intends to lure me under the bridge as a place of execution. Since I am a born victim, indeed, as I am a boxman, which is the same as not existing. No matter how they try, they'll never kill me. The role of killer automatically goes to my enemy. That doesn't mean that everything proceeds according to logic. I'm prepared to meet the attack. The wet surface of the slope is steep and slippery. Of course, when it comes to strength, I fancy he has something of an edge on me. I wonder if, contrary to my feelings deep down, I don't want to die. Now then, time and place are suitable to the victim. The speed of the tide is ideal too. A very old-fashioned, thick-bodied bridge that spans like a last constricting ring the funnel-shaped mouth of the canal, swollen at high tide with seawater. As the central portion rises in an arc to let ships pass, the girders from the area at the foot of the bridge are conspicuously high. Since I am a boxman walking around with a waterproof room on my back like a snail, there is no need to worry about mere rain blown sideways or the height of girders. Compared to a real room, the weak point of a box is that it has no floor, I suppose. If the wet wind comes blowing up from underneath, it is hard to avoid, whatever I do. But you can think of it in another light, precisely because there is no flooring. I can sit close by the water's edge without fear of being flooded. Even if the water level suddenly rises, swollen at high tide by the rain, as long as it doesn't exceed the height of my boots, I can always stand up and change positions. For those who have not actually had the experience, this will seem madly carefree. Besides, from now on the tide will be going out. No need to worry lest the water rise more than it has. The black band of seaweed, as if drawn with a ruler along the base of the embankment, now rotting from oil wastes, clearly divides the view into upper and lower parts. A dark swell spreading out from somewhere has begun to erase the ripples from the surface of the water. Immediately downstream from the bridge, pylons, large and small whirlpools, sluggish, like the melting of unrefined rice honey, gradually begin to form. They are actually rather small depressions, but wooden fish boxes. Fragments of bamboo baskets and plastic containers draw falteringly near, swirl suddenly around, trembling, turn over several times, and just as their speed seems to slacken, are all at once swallowed up. Yes, indeed, in an emergency I shall join these notes to the wooden boxes and the bamboo baskets. The shadow of someone appears on the embankment. If it is not she, I shall immediately put them in a vinyl bag, seal the mouth after blowing it up, and then wrap the opening several times with a thin wire that I have doubled. About 22 to 23 seconds. Then I shall bind red vinyl tape over the wire, leaving long conspicuous ends. I shall fix a stone the size of a fist to the tape by means of twisted paper. That will take less than 5 seconds. The whole business will take about 30 seconds. However long it lasts, it shouldn't take more than a minute. Furthermore, no matter how her substitute hurries, it will take him 2 or 3 minutes to come down the stone stairway by the landing, cross the slippery stone slope, and get here. I have no fear. I won't have plenty of time. If he shows the slightest strange behavior, I shall immediately throw the bag into the current. It should go pretty far with the attached stone. No matter how he tries to reach it, he'll never get it. The bag will head directly toward the whirlpools. If he's an expert swimmer, I wonder if he'll plunge in and chase after it. No, an expert would surely avoid such recklessness. Even the passage of small boats is forbidden after the tide has begun to withdraw, but he will be aware of the whirlpools without reading the sign on the embankment. After faltering for a while, the bag will ultimately be swept out to sea, and then after hours or days, the paper string will come undone and the stone will be released. The air-filled bag will easily attract attention with its red tape drifting in with the shore tides. And it goes on, and at the end of this chapter, this part, he says, come on, the lead in my pencil is gone, come on, I've had enough, is she really going to come or not? And then a side note, or a kind of parenthetical footnote, I can't sharpen the pencil with this rusty knife. Tomorrow, if I'm able to prolong my existence until then, I must get 2 or 3 ballpoint pens. The ones around the service entrance of the middle school have the most ink left in them. I'm going to stop there. That's 45 minutes of reading from TheBoxMan. Thank you very much. I'll see you again with music, talks, readings, photography, stand-up comedy, something. Signing off from Tokyo. Still not dead, not coughing too bad today, not wheezing, Too bad today after having had a 2-day cold. Marc, Lowe in Tokyo. White walls and tissue boxes. See you next time. Bye.